history doesn't repeat itself, but it sometimes rhymes. Similarities are sufficient that it invites us to compare one situation to another. But I couldn't agree more emphatically. I mean, it goes back to Heraclitus, who's the first person that said you can't step into the stream of time twice at the same point. That's 3,000-year-old wisdom, and it's as true today as it was when he first said it. There's a 20th century writer from Philadelphia, Agnes Repplier, who once said that history doesn't make us smart for the next time. We can't predict the future from the historical record, but it makes us wise forever. In other words, if you know some history, you can't predict the future, but you can understand things. You have some bases for comparison. You can scale things. Is this bigger or lesser than whatever? Or is it more dire or more opportunity? Or you've just got some ways to judge things that you wouldn't have if you didn't know some history.
On the same track, one of my recommendations is not to fall into anecdote trap. Look for patterns, but be careful of using anecdotes to judge history, because they may not be consistent. They might not apply to recent culture, but look for patterns and build theory. Build theory that's accurate, that's predictable, that's valid, that's useful. I teach the case study method, which is all anecdotes, but I never teach it without theory to back it up. To take that case study and say, one, it disproves the theory or it proves it, but on its own stand, it's not the way things always are. So try to look at the big picture, look at these trends, where things are going, what's happening relatively, getting better or worse, but not trying to find the silver bullet in one incident.
Jim, we have time for one more question.
We have time for one more question. I'm going to call on somebody who hasn't spoken. Actually, there are two people who have hands up who haven't spoken. So I'm going to go to Alan and then Janice.
My question is mainly primarily focused on Huey. I've always found him to be an interesting character. Now, I know it's kind of hard to project with what-if scenarios, but how would you have seen Louisiana government going had Huey not died when he did? I mean, you spoke about the second Louisiana Purchase, and obviously his feelings towards Roosevelt probably wouldn't have allowed that to occur. But how would it have been different had Huey not died when he did?
Well, you probably need to go back to 1932 when he was elected senator, because Huey changed dramatically as soon as he was elected senator. I listed all those things he did that were great for Louisiana. When he was elected senator, they stopped. He built no more roads, no more bridges. He put very little back into LSU at that time. He had Louisiana solid. In fact, he went back and started sapping the people to pay for all the things. I mean, he put in, he said if it moves, he taxed it. He taxed soft drinks. He taxed cosmetics, just to pay for those things. So again, he was moved into the national politics. He intended on campaigning around the country for a Share of the Wealth program. He would have been a huge thorn in Roosevelt's side. He would have sapped a lot of populist votes out there that indeed went to Roosevelt in '36. '36 was a landslide. I don't foresee Huey Long changing that election at all. I don't think the numbers were there. He thinks they were, and he had a lot of energy. He won most battles, not only because he was brilliant, which he was, but he just ran you to death. He never slept. He never slept.
Shanice, last word.
Okay, this is a big question. There's a big disconnect between academic historians and the really rich, wonderful, layered history that you share with us, and the people who create state standardized testing that these teachers have to live with. Okay. How can you do a better job of influencing history education in this country? So that our students can be as excited about history as we are and as you are.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this has been one of the things I've learned from working on this grant with you all and working over the last 6 or 7 years on several of these. I'm not just being ingratiating when I say, you guys, I have enormous admiration for what you do and also enormous sympathy. Because not only, we were talking about this at lunch, you guys have become the kind of scapegoats for a lot of ills in our society. But you're being, put under high pressure evaluations when you're given less and less opportunity to succeed in those evaluations. I don't know. I mean, one of the possibilities would be to try at a political level to try to roll back what has become a kind of knee-jerk assessment-based, standards-based culture that has tried to, which in terms of history has increasingly taken things like thinking and synthesis and the kinds of things that we're trying to do here off the table. You guys are probably better equipped to answer, but you've both worked on these. Do you have thoughts about this?
Yes, I do. Things are changing, and you've seen it dramatically. And I think one word probably puts it best, and that's competition. We are so much more competitive now in every field. Education, commerce, higher education, colleges are competing for students. Companies are going and coming, more mergers. You see Bernie Madoff taking advantage of the situation. And because of this hyper competition, we are being forced to be much more accountable, much more measurable, much more empirical. I'm an associate dean. I spend a good part of my time on accountability efforts, on outcome measures, which you guys fight every day. Not only are we told what to teach, but we have to prove that we've taught it. And you're seeing that across the board. It's not just in education. You're seeing it in police departments, fire departments, public works, across the board. It's part of this new pressure, this hyper competition that I'm seeing in the country. That's not an answer to your question, but you should not be surprised by this pressure. You should see it coming and probably increasing in the future.
Two last thoughts. One is the university I'm at. And look, I'm at, as does David, at a university that thinks itself above all of these things. We're in the throes of the assessment culture, and the federal and the assessment bodies are coming at us right now. And so now university professors, even in a place like Stanford, are going to be asked to prove that their students learned anything. And we're not going to fare any better in that, I promise you, than you are. Last thing I'll say, the one thing we can do, and this is to end it on a more positive thing, a more positive thought, is, part of what you've seen with these guys is just an enormous excitement and enthusiasm and delight for history. And just how wonderful it is and how exciting and how much fun it is and how much we adore these stories and how much we adore pondering them and how much they shape the way we see the world we live in today, even if they don't offer us any tidy lessons. And I will say for myself that insofar as I have that quality, I got it from my teachers, including one who's here. And and I think that that's one of the things that we can just try to do within the really unreasonable strictures you operate within, just to communicate your enthusiasm for this stuff. So that goes a long way.
History is not boring. Some of us historians are.
Yeah. On that happy note, thank you. Mike, you want to, or would you want?